Hey.
Alright, y'all, so news just broke from Shams. Rest in peace to the Woj bomb, but now we got the Shams bomb. Karl-Anthony Towns is now a New York Knick. The Knicks send out Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, and a first-round pick via Detroit in order to get the trade done. Now, this is a trade with a whole lot of subplots going on in the behind-the-scenes shadows, and my initial reaction, I was just very confused. I wasn't really a fan of it for either side immediately. Now that I've had some time to think about it, I'm starting to see the visions. You know, I've been seeing tweets from everyone, their moms, trying to explain the nuances, and yeah, there's a lot going on here. For the most part, the thing that stands out to me most about this trade is just how random of a time that it happened at. You know, it's late September, training camps and media days are just about to be underway, and two teams that were in contention for the title just last season have now decided to ship core pieces of their team. The vibes of it all just feel off. Anyway, we'll start with the New York Knicks side of things. So obviously, the big motivation behind this deal is they have finally landed themselves a surefire center. You know, there were reports coming out recently that they're going to have to dabble with some Randle at the 5, especially since news just broke that Mitchell Robinson is going to be missing time to start the season. So that left them with centers like Precious Achiuwa and Jericho Sims to round up the rotation, and that's just not something you really want to deal with if you're a Knicks fan. And while on the one hand, you know, Karl-Anthony Towns in place of Julius Randle at the 5, for sure an upgrade from a, you know, just pure basketball head-to-head standpoint. I'm just interested to see what this fit looks like because it's such a culture change from how this Knicks team played just a season ago. At least when I look back on the Knicks and their really strong second half of the season and playoff run, they seemed, the theme of the team was that they were very physical, they crashed the glass, especially on the offensive side, and they made a living out of getting second possessions and ultimately just winning that possession battle, and that was how they beat a lot of teams. Whereas now, if they're rocking Cat at the 5, they're going to have to switch to a more, you know, one and done possession team. They're going to be able to space the floor a lot better with Cat being able to knock down shots from the outside. They're also going to be able to attack the mismatch of Cat being guarded by bigs. But on the other side, the opposing teams can also attack that mismatch on the other end. And then obviously there is the loss of Dante DiVincenzo that has to be mentioned. And while I understand that, you know, there are a whole lot of wings on this new look Knicks team heading into the season, and the fact that, you know, DiVincenzo's minutes were going to be much less than what he was seeing last season, I just still don't think it's a great idea to get rid of one of the best floor spacers from last season, along with the guy who, you know, albeit it was an injury-riddled team, but he was your second best scoring option and just your second best scorer in general during that playoff run last year. And perhaps the craziest subplot of all for the New York Knicks is that they've lost the power of friendship. I know it was probably the biggest story for them heading into the season, the Villanova Knicks, and the front office has decided that they're just not even going to let them play one game together, which from a human emotional standpoint is pretty messed up. But that brings up another point for me of why this trade confuses me, is because it seemed like it was set in stone that the Knicks were going to be very patient with this roster and, you know, throw out Randle at the 5, see what happens, and then as the season went on, as the trade deadline approached, they were going to address the team's needs from, you know, whatever happened during that first half of the season. In fact, I was creating hot takes for a future video, and my hot take for the season for the New York Knicks was that Julius Randle was going to get extended at some point because the Knicks were going to realize, like, hey, this is actually doable with Randall at the 5, small ball, OG playing the 5 on defense, all that good stuff. So for them, again, to just randomly on a random night in the end of September, right before training camp, to now say, hey, we're going to trade Julius Randle, I'm just very curious what sparked that to happen. Now, last thing I'll say on the Knicks, and again, it's just going to be a very different looking team than we saw last season. Not to say that they will necessarily be worse. I think they're still going to be a very good team. It's just now you obviously have starting lineup that probably looks something like, Brunson, Bridges, Hart, Anunoby, and Cat. Then off the bench, you're going to have Achua, Mitchell Robinson once he's healthy, Deuce McBride. They added guys like, Marcus Morris, Landry Shamet. I don't know what's going to happen with those guys. I don't think much, but, who knows. All in all, I think my final point for the Knicks is I'm just curious what they look like by the end of the season, because although they have gotten better, and I feel like their floor might have gotten a bit higher in trading away Randall for Cat, I just don't necessarily think they have as high as a ceiling as they once had, at least prior to the trade. Because I don't necessarily want to say that I am out on the Knicks after this trade. They definitely got better. I just don't, I'm just not quite sure why they did this at this time. As for the Minnesota Timberwolves side of things, another just head-scratching decision. I've seen a lot of very upset and angry Timberwolves fans on Twitter tonight, and for really good reason. For much of the similar, ideas for the Knicks, they just randomly decided to trade away their former first overall pick from around a decade ago, someone who has been very loyal to the Minnesota franchise, and a guy that a lot of Timberwolves fans have high regards for, and they claim that he is one of the best players in Timberwolves history. Minnesota is also fresh off of a Western Conference Finals run where they took out the reigning champs in the Denver Nuggets, and then had kind of a bad loss to the Dallas Mavericks, and a year where a lot of people thought that they were going to get to the NBA Finals and potentially even win it all. So for them to go from that to then trading away one of the core pieces of that team, it's understandable why fans are upset. And I've seen a lot of people on Twitter, again, trying to figure out the reasoning for why the Timberwolves have done it. Some ideas that I've seen have included, just finances, money, which is usually a good reason for why people do most things, because Julius Randle is making about $20 million less than Karl-Anthony Towns is this year. Not to mention this is the last year on Julius Randle's contract, whereas Cat still has plenty of money ahead of him. And this fact has led a lot of people to believe that this is more of a forward-thinking plan kind of move for the Timberwolves. Not exactly that they are punting on this year, because obviously they're still fielding a very good roster, but they are making this move with the future in mind. And another idea that I've seen pop up that kind of flows in with that is that some people think that Julius Randle is going to transition to the bench in favor of Naz Reid in order to enforce that future kind of feeling for the Timberwolves. So now they have core players with Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, and then Naz Reid, 3 super talented young players that they clearly want to build a core around. I personally don't see Julius Randle moving to the bench, especially since, again, he's on the last year of his contract. This could very well just be a one and done year. I've also seen people share the idea that they're going to flip Julius Randle, or maybe around the trade deadline, for other pieces for their future, which I could also see that happening. But again, where is Julius Randle going to be traded to? The Knicks had plenty of struggles in trying to find a trade partner for him. It'll be more of the same for the Timberwolves. Regardless, focusing on the present, a Gobert-Julius Randle front court is just kind of horrendous. I'm not sure what that's going to look like. It'll probably be very comical. With the Timberwolves making this deal, it is very clear that they expect some sort of a leap from Anthony Edwards, some sort of a leap from Jaden McDaniels. I think people underrate Julius Randle. He's had some very good seasons of basketball in his career, and he's definitely, I don't know if I want to say he's a better fit than Cat on this team, but his fit just kind of makes a bit more sense than what Cat was bringing to this team. I'm very curious to see what the offense looks like, because, a lot of the time it was Ant trying to do a lot more than he was capable of, and doing a little bit of hero ball, where Cat would be a pretty good second scoring option for this team. So if they put Julius Randle into that role, I don't think it's going to go great. But something that will help their offense for sure is the addition of Donte DiVincenzo. Another very interesting subplot of this trade is the fact that the bench guards for Minnesota are just very unsure right now outside of Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So adding someone like Donte DiVincenzo to that rotation is definitely a huge boost. Because now, instead of having to rely on two rookies in Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon Jr., you can now add the veteran Donte DiVincenzo. You can platoon Mike Conley and Anthony Edwards, so you always have at least one ball handler out there. Nickeil Alexander-Walker can also help out in that area. It definitely helps shore up one of the big questions for this roster heading into the season. And my last thought for the Timberwolves side of things will be very similar to my last thought for the Knicks, in that I still think that this is a very good basketball team. I don't expect the defense to be much worse than what it was last year. They are ranked first in the entire NBA. They're going to be one of the best defenses in the NBA yet again. But there are now much more questions on offense, and although I don't think they got better by any means, they certainly didn't get a whole lot worse. If anything, their floor to me is around the same, while their ceiling has taken a bit of a hit. And maybe rather than being in that top tier in the Western Conference, maybe they drop down to like either the bottom of that first tier or the top of the second tier now. So again, I do kind of see the vision in this being a long-term move for the Timberwolves, especially if they plan on building around that core of Naz Reid, Anthony Edwards, and Jaden McDaniels. But this is certainly a move that will have to be monitored as the season goes on to see, what exactly do the Timberwolves do with Julius Randle? Do they get anything else for him? What does he even look like on this team? A whole lot of stuff to be figured out. So all in all, at the end of the day, again, I question the vibes of this trade. Neither fan base really seemed happy about this trade being done, which is usually not a great sign for either side, which again, my main question is just why? Why now? Why mess up the vibes for each team like this? It just, money saving, is it egos, is it camaraderie? I don't know. I'm just a guy. Regardless, one thing I do know for sure is that this was a very necessary big move in this offseason. It's giving NBA fans a really nice appetizer for the upcoming season. If you weren't already in basketball shape, basketball mindset, this will definitely help you get there. And, for that, I can appreciate the trade, even though, again, it just doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, that's all I got. I hope you all enjoyed this one. If you want to see some more content, check out the channel, like, comment, subscribe, all of those good things, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.